While the world screams for attention, the most dangerous men are the ones you can't read and can't control. Not because they hide, but because they stop reacting the way you expect. Most people give you patterns, signals, moves you can follow. He doesn't. People assume he's passive, that if he shows nothing, he must not have power. But the truth is different. He gives you nothing to work with, no responses you can count on. While others keep explaining themselves, he moves without announcing. And when he does respond, it's on his terms. And here's what unsettles people. You can't pressure him. You can't pull him into games he no longer plays. Because men don't lose control all at once. They lose it slowly by reacting to everything. If you've ever felt pulled, tested, or quietly manipulated, this will make sense to you. Today, we're breaking down the 6 signs of men who can't be read or controlled. Not loud men, not dominant men, but men who became untouchable the moment they stopped being predictable. They don't need to prove who they are. Most men give themselves away without realizing it. What they've built, what they've become. But the more a man explains himself, the easier it becomes to define him. And once people can define you, they know exactly how to handle you. These men stepped out of that because they already know who they are. And they don't need anyone else to confirm it. They stop trying to be seen clearly. Because the moment people understand you too well, they don't have to fight you anymore. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Frank sat at a business dinner. When it was his turn to speak, he kept it short. No details, no promises, just enough to move things forward. After the meeting, one of the younger men asked him, "I still don't know what you actually want." Frank smiled and said, "That's the point." And that's what confuses people, because they're used to reading men through what they display. But when there's nothing obvious to measure, they hesitate because they can't quite place him. That's where his advantage begins. If your life was real, you don't need to prove it happened. If this made sense to you, leave a like so more men stop giving themselves away this easily. They don't perform for attention. You've seen it before. A man talking about his plans before they even exist, explaining everything before anything is real. Maybe he's excited and lets it slip a little. But men who understand the game know that's where the cracks begin. The more a man performs, the more he reveals what moves him, what impresses him, what he's trying to prove. Men who can't be read stepped away from that, not because they don't have anything to show, but because they understand the cost of being watched too closely. When they help someone, it stays between them. When they build something meaningful, the work stands on its own. At work, everyone was outlining their next moves. Deadlines, what they were building next. When it reached Raymond, he kept it simple, then moved on. Afterwards, someone said, "I can't tell what you're doing." He smiled and replied, "You're not supposed to." And that's exactly why no one could get ahead of him. If you know someone who keeps explaining everything, send this to them. They'll understand. Most men don't realize, the more they try to be seen, the easier they become to study. A man who needs an audience is easy to figure out. But a man who doesn't perform moves without that pressure. He invests where attention can't follow, in skills that take time to build, in relationships that stand on their own, without leaving a trail people can follow. He becomes harder to read and harder to control than most men ever realize. They let you misread them. When I was younger, if someone said something untrue about me, I'd fight it immediately. I had to prove myself. Clear my name. I was like a restless horse, always ready to charge. But now, even when someone accuses me, I ask one question. Do you have proof? That's it. No arguments, no long explanations. There's still a small impulse inside, but I don't follow it. I'd rather go to sleep. And if it actually matters, I'll let a lawyer handle it. People around me can't figure me out. So they start guessing. And most of the time, they get it wrong. For men who can't be read, silence isn't absence. It's strategy, like they just made a move on the board, and no one in the room understands what it means yet. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary Japanese swordsman who fought over 60 duels without defeat, never followed a fixed style. He changed his rhythm, his timing, even his stance, until his opponents realized too late they were trying to read something that refused to stay the same. When you stop broadcasting everything, something shifts. They don't know where to place you, and that unsettles them. That's where your advantage begins. They don't let you read their inner world. After enough time, a man learns something the hard way. Once people see what affects you, they know where to press. And most of the time, they don't react right away. They just remember. And wait, your weak points, a mistake you made, a wound from a past relationship, and suddenly, something private becomes something others can use. So he no longer explains how he feels. He no longer rushes to clarify everything. Because once your inner world becomes predictable, so do you. That night, after a few drinks, he said more than he meant to. Halfway through, he paused. Something felt off, like he had just said more than he should have. Across the table, one of his friends smiled, subtle but enough. A few days later, the pressure came exactly where he had exposed himself. It's strange how it works. The moment you open up just a little too much, it's not the words that stay with people. It's where you hesitated, where your voice softened. That's what they remember. Be honest. How many times have you realized it too late, that you said just enough for someone to use it later? Or worse, did you hand it to them yourself just to feel understood for a moment? If you've ever seen this happen in your own life, just type "learn" below. No explanations needed. And once you stop giving yourself away so easily, everything changes. He became quieter, but not weaker, more reserved, and much harder to disturb. That's the part most people miss. They think silence is withdrawal. It's not. It's what keeps them in control. They don't chase every opportunity. Most men move the moment they see an advantage. More money, more attention, a faster way forward. It looks like progress. But they don't stop to ask one thing. What is this going to cost me? Men who can't be controlled don't rush like that because they've learned something the hard way. Not every opportunity is freedom. Some of them are traps, just well packaged. A better deal that slowly takes your time, a higher position that quietly takes your peace, an easy win that pulls you into something you can't step out of later. Most traps don't look dangerous at the start. They look rewarding. That's why people walk into them willingly. But these men slow down. They don't chase every advantage that appears. They step back. They look at the structure behind it. Who benefits if I say yes? What happens if I try to leave? Because control doesn't always come from pressure. Sometimes it comes from reward. Seneca once wrote, "He who is greedy is always in want, and the more a man chases, the easier he becomes to lead." Most men don't see it happening because it doesn't feel like pressure. Give a man something he wants badly enough, and you don't have to force him. He'll stay on his own. That's why they're careful. They don't just ask what they gain, they ask what they give up, and most of the time, that answer is enough to walk away. While others keep chasing what looks good, they keep what actually matters. Health, time, peace, things you don't notice losing until it's too late. So they move slower, not because they lack ambition, but because they've learned that the fastest path is often the easiest one to get trapped in. They don't offer words, they offer weight. Most men speak to manage the moment, and that's where they become predictable. Promise too easily. Commit before they've measured the cost. It sounds good in the moment until it doesn't hold. Men who can't be read move differently. They don't fill silence with reassurance. They don't promise just to keep things smooth. If something isn't certain, it doesn't leave their mouth. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, was known for keeping decisions internal until they were ready to move. Not because he lacked ideas, but because once something was said, it had to hold. That's why people can't read them. Sometimes they pause, sometimes they say nothing, and that alone makes people uneasy. But that's exactly where the line is drawn. Power isn't in saying more, it's in saying only what you're willing to stand behind. And once a man lives like that, people stop listening to how much he says. They start watching when he does. Because they've learned something simple. If he hasn't said it, it's not decided. And if he has, it's already done. This was never about being silent for the sake of it or turning yourself into someone distant, hard to reach, hard to know. It was about something far more practical. Control, not over others, over yourself. Because most men think they lose control in big moments. They don't. It slips in the small ones, the ones no one notices at the time, explaining too much, reacting too quickly, speaking just to fill the silence. And over time, that becomes a pattern, one people learn and use. But when that pattern disappears, so does their leverage. That's when something changes. You're no longer easy to read, no longer easy to pull, no longer easy to predict. Not because you became cold, but because you became deliberate. What you show is chosen. What you say is measured. And when you move, it's never by accident. And most importantly, you're no longer reacting on demand. That's what makes a man hard to control. Choice. So ask yourself one thing: where are you still reacting when you could be choosing? Because every reaction you don't question is a place someone else can step in. But the moment you stop giving everything away, you don't need to prove anything anymore. You don't need to control anyone else. You simply become someone people can't quite figure out, and somehow can't seem to move. And that kind of man doesn't need to be understood to be respected. This is Move or Die Stoic. Stay grounded.